Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates, where today I'm making 3 cards using one sketch, which I will show now on screen, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp January card kit for this. To start off my first card, I'm going to be using patterned papers, and this is my card for the mailroom challenge, which starts today, the theme of which is Love Your Men. So I'm making a masculine card, and I'm using those Echo Park Celebrate Winter pattern papers that came in the kit. I have a link to all the products down below if you want to find them. And I'm starting by colouring the snowman from Snow Much stamp set, and I'm using the pattern papers I picked out as a guideline for the colours I should use. I'm going to go very quickly through the colouring because this video is going to be quite long anyway with 3 cards in it, and I don't want to waste too much time on the colouring. So hopefully you don't mind. You can see all the colours I have used on screen, and I will try and skip over things where it gets a bit repetitive. I did, before I started recording, I did add some colour just to the edges of the white areas of the snowman, so the snow. I used a very light blue and blended it out with my blender pen, and then after that I went on to colouring the snowman's accessories. I started with the scarf and the headband for the earmuffs, which I've done in a blue or kind of blue-green colour to go with the blue in the pattern papers. Then I thought I'd bring in some of that more neutral colour using kind of caramelly shades, and these are Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, and you can see the caps on screen for all the colours I have used. I also wanted to bring in some of the red as on the striped paper, and I only actually have one red marker, which is not really enough for doing shading with the reds. So to get around this, I'm using red browns to add in my shadow areas. Another alternative is you could use green if you want, or greys. These would also work well for adding shading if you are lacking colours. The green works well with red because it's complementary. The grey you could use with any colour that you're lacking your shades for. So once I had all of that coloured, I'm going to fussy cut the snowman out. If you've seen my videos before, when I fussy cut, you'll know that I prefer to cut right along the stamp line, but these particular stamps, the snowmen have such narrow arms that didn't seem a sensible way to do it, so I instead left a white border all around. The last thing to add was the sentiment onto my more neutral pattern paper with the snowflakes, which I stamped with Altenew jet black ink, and then I'm going to adhere all of the pattern papers to my, I believe it's Island Blue card base, just using double-sided tape. The blue strip across the middle does have a little hole in it. This is the hole to hang up the pattern paper pack, but I will hide that underneath my snowman and no one will know any different. So this is a good way to use up those scraps of pattern paper. As a final touch on this card, I'm going to add some Tonic Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen all over the snowman. And as I said, this is for my design team project for the mailroom Love Your Men challenge, and I know glitter isn't typically considered to be very masculine, but I think it works well on this snowy design. Also, I will quickly say that the mailroom challenge is having a giveaway on Instagram, so be sure to check that out if you'd like to win some goodies. So that completes the first card. The second card I'm going to make is using the same sketch. As I said, they're all using the same layout, but this time I'm turning it into a 1-layer card, so no pattern papers, just stamping and also some ink blending. I started by stamping onto a light blue card base, and then I'm going to stamp it again onto a post-it note and create a mask. This second card was originally meant to be my design team project for the Watercolor Wednesday challenge, which is starting today, the theme of which is feminine, but I felt like it ended up not feminine enough, which is why I ended up doing a third card and made it a bit more feminine. So I'm using the MFT cloud border stencil, this is the smaller one, to add some clouds to my background, and I'm using Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide for this. And then I flipped the card around and I'm adding snowy hills using a white pigment ink pad. I don't really like this white pigment ink I have because I have a really hard time getting it to give enough coverage, but I thought I'd give it a go because I have it. And the border I'm using for my snowy slopes I just cut with my craft knife. Then I removed my masks and I'm going to colour in the snowman. And I'm using a white Caran d'Ache pencil. I'm putting the colour heaviest on the areas where I want it lightest, and then lighter coverage where I want the shadow area to be, because the colour of the card base wouldn't actually create that shadow area. I did bring in a scrap of paper to hold the card with, because otherwise my fingers were getting quite inky from that pigment ink that was still wet, and I didn't want to leave fingerprints in it. And again, as I'm trying to not make you sit and watch too much colouring, I'll speed through this. Once I'd finished the snowy areas of the snowman, I bought in some other coloured pencils to colour the accessories. And because I was still trying to go for a more feminine card, I decided to go with pinks and purpley colours for this. These pencils I'm using are actually watercolour pencils, but I often use them as colouring pencils because I don't really have any others. Well, I do, but I find these have the better selection of colours, and they work well enough as regular pencils if you don't activate them with water. Whilst on the body, I used the white just to add the highlights. With the coloured areas of the scarf, for example, and the earmuffs, I'm shading as I normally would, where I put the colour down strongest where I want it darkest and lighter where I want it lighter. I went with purple for the sweater or jumper, however you want to call it, of the snowman. And on this one, I decided to give the sweater to be all one colour rather than making the stripes alternate. This was partly because I didn't want to bring in any other colours, so I thought I would just go with that. And again, I'm building up the colour most strongly in the shadow areas and lighter where I want it to be highlighted. I'm not great with coloured pencils. I prefer to colour with my alcohol markers, but I find the key with coloured pencils to get the best look is to work in layers and build them up, which I don't necessarily have a lot of patience for, which is probably why I don't like it all that much. Then I will add the colour to the headband on the earmuffs and also the cuffs on the gloves. Decided to go with dark grey for these, and I brought in just a touch of black to make the shaded areas even darker. And then a little bit of orange for the carrot nose as well, of course. And then I did put this back into my MISTI, which I'd left the stamp in place, stamped over it again to get a better line around it where I'd coloured over it. And I'm going to use some black Nuvo drops to add just a little bit of shine to the eyes. You could also use a black glaze pen if you have one. I do not have one. At this point I was thinking I really don't like this card. It has grown on me since then, I don't mind it as much, but I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I decided I would try adding a scored frame all around, and I think that does add a bit of extra interest to it. You could skip doing this though. And I think normally it's the other way around, but I think the colours of this card look better on camera than they do in real life. In real life I found it's quite hard to see the background very well, and like I said, I wasn't too happy with this card. And I didn't think it was feminine enough, so I thought I'd have another go and create my third card. So once again, I stamped the snowman and masked it off, and then this time I'm using a white card base, and I'm going to add the clouds with Spun Sugar Distress ink. So I'm making pink clouds because pink is definitely a feminine colour. Blue, of course, can be used in a feminine way, which is why I tried it, but like I said, I wasn't happy with how it worked out, so never mind that. So I just quickly work through adding the clouds and making sure the colour is built up enough. And on this occasion I decided actually I wasn't going to bother putting in any snowy hills. I thought it was obvious enough that there was snow without adding more hills in, and also I thought that maybe the blue card had been a bit busy with all those hills, and doing it this way this time meant it was a bit less busy. I'm using mint as the colour to shade my snow on this one. On the first card I had used a very pale blue. On this one I decided a pale mint would go nicely with that pink, and I will use my blender pen just to soften the edges and make it look a bit more natural. Then I decided to use more pinks to add the colour to the accessories. So the stripes on the jumper I am doing with, I think these are called antique pinks, and then the alternate stripes with some dusky pinks or dusky purples. And again, I'm paying attention to where I put my shadows, laying the shadows in first and then adding the rest of the colour. I used the same shades of pink for the earmuffs and the gloves. And then I thought I'd bring in another shade of purple for the scarf and the band on the earmuffs. So I'm using lavenders here. However, the lightest lavender I felt was far too bright. It's a very bright pink almost. And once I had the colour in, even doing tip to tip to try and make it blend better because there's quite a jump between these two shades, I just wasn't happy with the way it looked. I tried to work it and keep going over it a bit, keep adding more of the darker lavender, but it just wasn't working for me. So in the end, what I decided to do was to go back over it with the lightest of the dusky purple colours, and this would bring it more in line with the other colours I had used. At first when I started doing this, I thought maybe I've made a mistake because it was too similar to the dusky purple on the sweater, but I think actually it is different enough that it works. I also brought in a touch of ivory on the cuffs of the gloves, and that completes the third and final card. So here's another look at all three cards I made. There's the masculine one with the patterned paper, there's the first one layer one where I coloured on the blue background, and then there's the more feminine one layer card. As I said earlier, all the products I have used will be linked down below. I will also have links for both of the challenges that I mentioned that I have made these projects for. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you will press the like button down below, but if you didn't, the dislike button is right there next to it. Either way, thank you for letting me know what you think of it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you want to let me know which of these three cards you prefer, which you feel is best representative of the sketch, and also perhaps if you've had much experience in adapting sketches in different ways like this. If you enjoyed this video, then you can press the subscribe button that's on screen now to make sure you don't miss any of my future videos, and there are also a couple of other videos showing that you may enjoy if you want to see more from me straight away. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye!